Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Green Flag. I'm your host, Lukas Wacker. With me, as always, we have Kyle Cushman. And on today's episode, we've got you covered for the Atlanta race weekend recap for the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series, Xfinity Series, and, of course, the Cup Series, along with the 12 Hours of Sebring, which we'll talk about a little bit later on in the episode. We'll have the Cup Series to kick things off, and what a race it was. Very, very interesting to see the final laps play out. The race, itself, 500 miles. It is Atlanta, so it is what you expect when you go down in Georgia for this race. But nonetheless, it was another race weekend done and dusted in the book. So we'll recap that and break down that race for you guys in just a little bit. But before we get into all that, how you doing today, Kyle?
I'm doing good. Yes, a couple assignments behind the both of us, so feeling good having that all done with. But definitely an interesting race weekend. Didn't necessarily have the high moments that we've kind of had a couple of times so far this season, but still some solid racing throughout the entire weekend from the Truck Series all the way through to the Cup Series. A really strong end to the race weekend as well with a great last 10 laps there. Heartbreaking for fantasy, I'm not going to lie. I thought I had that thing sealed the entire race, and it all came falling apart in that final stage, which I'm sure we'll talk plenty about throughout this episode. But doing good. Nice little weekend of racing. Excited to break it all down.
Yeah, man, what a tough blow in fantasy. That's tough. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but let's just get right into the winner. Ryan Blaney takes home the checkered flag at Atlanta Motor Speedway, passing the dominant car of the day. I can't stress that enough. Dominant car of the day, Kyle Larson, with 8 laps to go. Very, very close to the end of this thing, and Ryan Blaney edges it out. Oh, man, I cannot believe that we are sitting here talking about this. I thought I had the scripts all written right before that with about 15 laps to go, and it really turned on its head in that final couple of laps there. And Ryan Blaney takes home his first victory of the season, only his 5th career Cup Series victory, if you can believe it. He's been around for quite a few years now. I wouldn't say that he's a veteran by any means, but he's getting up there with experience year by year. And to only think this is only his 5th career Cup Series victory is kind of astonishing to me. But nonetheless, congrats to Ryan Blaney on his win at Atlanta. Huge victory for him. The 6th different winner we've had in the first 6 races of the season. I believe it goes back to 2017 when we had that mark. And then 2010, I think it is. It had 10 different winners to start the season. It was madness back then.
Something like that.
But it is really a welcome sight to see that we're having so many different winners to start this season. Nobody has really emerged as that championship favorite as of yet. Obviously, it's early days in the season, but you can start to pick and choose a little bit on who's performing and who's being a little bit lackluster. But Ryan Blaney, Kyle, what a victory for him. Was in the top 5 for the majority of the days, just keeping his nose in there. But at the end, he really, really found the speed when he needed it most.
Yeah, a fantastic close for Ryan Blaney there. He kind of kept pace with Larson, who was by far the dominant car for the first 7/8 of this race, basically
Crazy.
The entire thing. But on that final run, he got beat on pit road, and they show that through some of the great graphics that they have there. But kept pace with him the entire end to that race, and then kept it interesting because it was a 2.5 second gap. And then, as you kind of mentioned there, with 20 to go, 15 to go, you just saw each lap, it kind of ticked down a little bit by a little bit. And then there was a big chunk taken out, I think, when there was maybe a lap car or something. And then all of a sudden...
Was there a lap car? Logano.
Well, no, before
Okay.
Logano. Before Logano,
Okay.
there was a lap car where held him up a little bit. But, of course, then the Logano stuff happened. I think that's overblown. But
I do as well.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
we'll
And we got an interesting little battle there at the end, which I don't think many people really thought we were going to get. People were writing the headlines already through
I did
at the end of the second stage, let alone the end of the race. But no, a great job by Ryan Blaney to go out and get the win. His first on a 1.5 miles when you look back over his career, Pocono, 2 Talladegas, and the Charlotte Roval. So first on a 1.5 miles, which is a little interesting to say given kind of how many times he's been in position to win races, especially on 1.5 miles when you look back to last year. So great for Blaney to go out there and kind of break that streak, get back in the win column. He's had 1 win each of these last handful of seasons. We'd expect him to go out and have multiple wins this year. Winning early on in the season here is a big step towards that after a slower start as well. So that's got to be big for their momentum. But for Kyle Larson, heartbreaking at the end there. Another dominant day at Atlanta. Of course, the last time he was there, led over 140 laps, I think it was, and then had a penalty that put him back and ended up finishing outside the top 10 even. But second place finish, still a huge points haul. He's up to second in the regular season point standings as well, which just goes to show how consistently strong they've been to start this season, and some great momentum as well going into a race that we would anticipate Larson to be the favorite at in the Bristol Dirt Race, which is going to be chaos. And I don't know how we're even going to attack that race preview coming up later this week, but
we're waiting until practice is done to do our fantasy picks. I need to see something. I'm sorry, folks. We are not going in there blind. We're giving ourselves a little bit of an edge here. Continue.
Everyone needs it a little bit, but awesome day for Larson, really solidifying themselves as a true player this season. But at the end of the day, it's Blaney. Ford keeps up their streak at Atlanta as well. It's not Keselowski. It was Blaney this time. So the pattern is broken between Harvick and Keselowski going back and forth. But no, a relatively dull race ended with at least a little bit of fireworks there at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Team Penske's first win of the season as well, if you can believe it or not. Like, that's a huge victory
Blaney
for them.
Would be the one to do it after the way things started as well?
Not really, but we are seeing a little bit of a trend here starting to make itself known over the mile and a half specifically here on who's strong and who's kind of being a little bit off to a slower start to this season. But I want to jump back to the second to last run. Ryan Blaney was really, really close to Kyle Larson at the end of that run. Larson kind of burned up his tires. We saw that a little bit, and Blaney was within about a second there prior to the final green flag pit stops, and then Larson just gapped him on pit road. He did an excellent job. That was the fastest in that 2-lap cycle that they showed on the broadcast.
Yeah, added like a second and a half, 2 seconds through it.
He did his job. Like, he absolutely maximized that. And Blaney actually had like the 4th fastest time out of anybody as well. Yeah. It was just that Larson just absolutely nailed it. So he did everything right, just burned his stuff up a little bit too much, and then Blaney just caught him at the end. There's nothing more to be said about that. We can look at Logano's situation as a lap car. Of course, you're going to look at him being on the lead lap, and just because of Logano's prior history with this situation, we've seen it in the past. But nonetheless, he did his job. He didn't actually really block as much as I would say if you look back. I know it's going to look a little bit obvious, but look back at Bristol last year in the playoffs. That was a little bit more obvious in my opinion. But this time, Atlanta's a wide racetrack. You have plenty of different grooves. Of course, aerodynamics and the air getting on the nose of the car is absolutely at the utmost importance with this aero package. But at the same time, Larson was dominant in the day, burned his stuff up a little bit too much trying to get around Logano, and then by that time, Blaney was just right on him there at the end to try and steal it. And Larson didn't have anything to really challenge him with. It was basically done and dusted once Blaney got to the back bumper, and he pulled off a great move. Went high in 3 and 4, got the big run off of 4.
For a second, they were going to wreck there. I'm not going to lie.
I didn't need that. That was the last thing I needed for my fantasy lineup because I really needed Ryan Blaney to pass Kyle Larson. We both had rough
days just in terms of overall points, but for those that don't know, basically I needed a Larson win to win fantasy because I had Chase Elliott in my lineup, and it was looking great until the third stage started.
It was exactly what I needed.
Yeah, exactly, you witch. But no, like I had Hendrick as a winning organization, and then Larson as well winning. Or I didn't have him winning in my lineup, but his win would add an extra 5 points, of course, than finishing second. Of course, you had Ryan Blaney in your lineup, so it was kind of, if only we combined them once again, it would have been great.
I know. Honestly.
But with that, it was basically like a 15, 20-point swing, whether Blaney won or Larson won. And unfortunately, for myself at least, once again, in the last few laps of a race, I end up losing fantasy there. At least it's not as like stunning and heartbreaking as the Cole Custer one was at Homestead when he just ran him because of tire and just nobody talks about it, and I have to try and figure out how I lost. That one I saw coming for a couple of laps there. I was hoping he would hold him off, but it didn't look great there. But I at least got a good Larson usage out of it. But yeah, we need some luck to go our way. It just gets like a nice 200-point fantasy day. Honestly. Just have like a great day because this so far has been a little bit rough. But just looping back around to the Logano thing, I don't have any problem with it, even if there was any blocking or anything going on, because for one, he's trying to stay on the lead lap later in a race when long run on tires, the longest run of the day, if I'm not mistaken. There 50 plus laps there, so anybody could add a tire, go down at any point, and you want to be in position to stay on the lead lap there. Give yourself a chance to go out and get a top 10 if there is a caution, so I'm fine with that there. And also, it's your teammate going for the win, trying to track down the guy. It's not like you're just going up there and throwing up the turbulent air just to be a jackass or anything like that. Like, there's a genuine purpose to do it. You want to help out your teammate, or at least have them have a shot there. So I don't have any problem with how Logano handled it. You look at his resume and you see it's happened a few times, and you can try to dig into it a little bit more, but I don't think it had a huge impact on things, and I'm perfectly fine if it did anyways.
Yeah, it's just going to look worse than probably what it was in this situation, right? Team Penske guy in second place trying to run down the leader. It is what it is at the end of the day. Obviously, I would feel a little bit more differently if Kyle Busch was in that situation, but nonetheless, it's just a racing deal. And this was, I look at it a little bit more, like I said, a little less as Logano at fault here than I do at Bristol last year, but bygones be bygones.
Or even Homestead last year with Hamlin and Chase Elliott there. So
yeah, exactly. It's just sometimes people are caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, and this is the situation that happens. And even if Larson maybe got past him, I still think Blaney could have potentially raced him and caught him. So it is what it is at the end of the day. Congratulations to Ryan Blaney, though. He was consistent the entire day, 3 points short of the maximum total that you can get in 60. I mean, he was just on it in stages, and of course getting the race win. So that's huge for that team. I predicted him to have a really, really big season, and hopefully this is the stepping stone for him to really take the lead over at Penske, because right now he definitely has the opportunity to do it. He's got the crew chief, I would say probably the best one over there at Team Penske, and he's also got the driving capabilities behind the wheel. I think Ryan Blaney's set to have a really big season. Obviously had a slow start to the season with the Daytona 500 bad luck, the road course bad luck, and Homestead being a little bit of a letdown. And I thought, with looking at Homestead and looking at Atlanta, there was a little bit more of a comparable, but really the 12 car showed up to play here when the numbers wouldn't have necessarily suggested it as much. Had a top 5 here last year, same with Homestead, but when you look at the results between the two races, they are drastically different in how that 12 car performs. So really big race for the 12 team. Of course, for Kyle Larson, like you said, Kyle, that is an exceptionally strong day. They can feel so good about what they brought to the track. I mean, if it was 400 miles like the race isn't going to be in July, nobody's going to be able to stop Kyle Larson, because this extra 100 miles really, really hampered them at the end of the things. But Larson is off to a phenomenal start this season, way surpassing what I ever thought that he would be doing coming back to the sport this season. You'd think there would be a little bit of an adjustment period or getting to grips with Hendrick Motorsports equipment. But, I mean, he's taken to it like nobody's business. It's been really, really impressive to see how talented Kyle Larson is. I think this is really where we're seeing how talented he really is, because we always had that question mark next to it at Chip Ganassi. How much is Kyle Larson's potential? Like, how much is he going to be able to accomplish if he had just that little bit more of a better ride? And we're seeing that right now. Probably the best, if not the best, on the 1.5 mile tracks to start this season. If you look at that for the rest of the season, I mean, you don't really want to burn any usages up elsewhere. Yeah. Like, it's really, really good trend. And unfortunately for him, Homestead isn't the championship finale this season. So he's going to have to find a little bit there at Phoenix. Obviously, probably had the strongest car at Phoenix this past 2 weekends ago, I guess it is. So, I mean, you can't help but feel very confident if you're in that 5 camp right now. So an exceptional day for the top 2. But then the biggest turning point of the race, I would say, was on a restart there in stage 2. It was pretty drastic on how it all kind of unfolded there. Kyle Larson obviously still in first at that point in time. Kyle Busch to his outside. And then we had a bit of an accordion effect. We talked about this on the last episode with the choose rule being such a crucial part and the outside line being
the one time I want to see an overtime or something where the choose rule would be so kind of fascinating to see, just given
at Atlanta for once.
How different the two lines are where you restart. Like, we would see like guys like 5-6 rows back even stay on the inside line just because of how much easier it is to restart there. I thought it would have been interesting to see how that would have played out with really like the first time truly seeing the choose cone in that kind of situation. Didn't get it here, but we still got some really entertaining restarts. And I think that one was one where you really see where the choose cone really comes into effect, because if any of those guys restart on the inside versus the outside, or I should say choose the inside versus the outside, specifically looking at, really any of the Chase Elliott to a certain extent, because he got some damage there, but mainly Kurt Busch, is if they restart on the inside, if they choose the inside there, they're probably continuing throughout the rest of the day. But they choose the outside, they take the gamble, spin the tires on the restart, accordion effect as per usual at this track, and it just ends up being somebody gets turned into the outside wall. And you can look and say that it was people maybe being a little too eager too early in the race, especially given that it's 500 miles and you're just getting into the second stage there. But we also saw after the next restart where there were some different players up in that top 10 after the restart. It kind of stayed. The top 10 didn't change a ton throughout that run. Like you had names like DiBenedetto up there in the top 5 who really probably didn't have the car to be there, but they got the track position off of the restart and they stayed there. So it's just unfortunate to see, because that number 1 Chip Ganassi car was
super fast,
super fast. At least top 10, if not a top 5 car for that day.
When you look at what the top 5 was at the end of the day, Kurt Busch maybe a top 3. It was
exactly.
If he put himself in the right position, that car was fast.
Yeah, it sucks because it takes out a good car at the beginning of the day or early on in the day for a 500-mile race. Yeah. Chase Elliott gets some damage in there. Denny Hamlin got off pretty scot-free there, which was interesting because he's the one that ended up turning him to the outside wall.
It always happens where the guy who turns somebody else never ever gets it, basically
and
involved in the incident they start.
Interesting because later on we saw the Truex Keselowski incident there where Truex got way out of the gas, got tight, and basically Keselowski ran into the back of him and screwed over his own day. And obviously that was a pretty significant hit, but I was surprised that Hamlin, given the accordion effect there and setting him to the outside wall, just given how much that impacted Keselowski, how little it impacted Hamlin.
Yeah, I didn't really look at it that way, but that's a good point. I don't know if I think it's probably just the speeds that they're going at that certain time. Going up to speed with Hamlin, obviously, and then Keselowski got a full run full of steam coming off of 4 there. So, I mean, at the end of the day, that restart kind of really dictated the tone of the rest of the race. It was pretty civil from then on. Nobody really wanted to mess with anything on the restarts. We didn't get many from then on, but nonetheless, I mean, it did hurt.
The 2 actual cautions we got non-stage breaks, of course, were 2 guys in my fantasy lineup, of course.
I mean, I had Kurt Busch, so I mean, at the end of
the Kurt Busch wouldn't hurt both.
I cannot believe the 2 weeks that we put Kurt Busch in our lineups. Basically, he has the most inconsistent days of his whole career.
Well, he was good at Atlanta. He just
I know. So we ended up both using Kurt Busch at the end of the day here to save a usage from the aforementioned Keselowski. We'll look at Penske in a little bit here. But, that restart set Kyle Busch back as well, just getting his rear tires lifted off the ground from Chase Elliott. And then –
you restarted on the outside first row and on the next restart,
he fell back to ninth.
Like 8th, 9th? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. He had a really fast car. We'll talk about Joe Gibbs in a bit too. But, I mean, at the end of the day, Kyle Larson wins both stages. He gets a really good points. I mean, it was just it was dominance, and by the end of it all, Ryan Blaney ends up being your victor. And a sweet moment after the race as well, giving a fan the checkered flag to a fan, obviously wearing Ryan Blaney merchandise. That's always something that you love to see. And I mean, if I ever got that as a kid from Kyle Busch, I would literally pass out on the scene. But
you pass out now.
I would, even just thinking about it, but really happy for that. That's obviously a lifelong memory for a kid, and really happy to see Ryan Blaney going to the fans. And, obviously we didn't get to really see mass in the stands, which is unfortunate, but at the end of the day, it was nice to see some fans and hear the roar of the fans this past weekend at Atlanta. But that was the turning point of the race. We dissected that a little bit. Well, let's look at the teams after this one here, Kyle. We can start off with the race winning organization. What a weird day for Team Penske.
Yes.
They had 4 cars this weekend. Let's not forget that. They had Austin Cindric with them this past weekend, making only his second career Cup Series start. But obviously the victor, Ryan Blaney, huge victory for him. But besides that, Team Penske was quite the letdown. Even before Keselowski had his incident with Truex, that 2 car was actually very, very poor from what we expected him, winning 2 of the last 4 races versus here at Atlanta.
Right? Because he was still in that 8th to 12th range for most of the time, a little bit lower than that at times. But I
was expecting top 5.
Exactly. When you look at what you would expect from the 2 car, and given that if the pattern continued between Harvick and Keselowski, he was supposed to win this one. And just never had that kind of speed, was consistently fringe top 10, if not outside of it. And then all came to to an end essentially when they had the contact with Truex there, which blew any chance that they had of salvaging the day. So definitely a strange day for Penske, especially when you look at how strong Blaney was, how little of a factor Logano was as well. And then similarly for Keselowski, very strange there. But I don't know how much you read into that at all.
I think, the damage that he sustained, I mean, I hate to bring it up, but it reminds me of when Kyle Busch at Las Vegas got into the lap car and the splitter was so far off of the ground a couple of years back in 2019. Like, it was basically a carbon copy of what that incident was, where the front end is smashed and the splitter is raised up and you have no downforce on the front end of that car then. So he finished 3 laps down by the end of this thing. A painful day for Keselowski. And like you said, Logano
as well. Yeah.
We talked about him with his lap down situation, being on the lead lap, that fringe guy. Basically the entire day was nowhere near the top 10 in terms of speed. And then Austin Cindric started at the back in this one. I mean, it is what it is at the end of the day for Cindric. I was expecting maybe a little bit more from the 33 car, I guess it is here in the Cup Series. But Penske as a whole was kind of off. One car out of the 4 was on it, and then the other 3 were a little bit lackluster, to say the least. I was expecting more from Keselowski. Obviously, we both had him in our fantasy lineups. It was basically a surefire bet where we're going to save Keselowski here, because we are not burning up a usage on the 2 car that only gets you about 8 points at the end of this thing. That is not maximizing Keselowski whatsoever. So disappointing day, I would say, overall for Team Penske, but I think you have to be super excited if you're Roger Penske, because you have Ryan Blaney here, your future basically right here in the 12 car, doing a fantastic job. That's a statement win for him, because the fact that he chased down the 5 car, which has arguably been the best on these 1.5 mile tracks to start the season, I mean, that has got to bode well for the 12 team and Roger Penske and the entire Penske organization. But you have to start asking a little bit of questions here. Logano has struggled on the 1.5 mile tracks to start the season significantly. Vegas, we expected him to run well. Not as much here at Atlanta. The numbers are decent for him, but when you look at what his teammates are doing, it's a little bit a raise your eyebrow kind of moment. And then Keselowski, it is what it is. Showed speed at Vegas, was decent on the short run at Homestead. Then they had that weird strategy where they pitted there in the final stage and it just messed it all up. But it's just been all over the place for Team Penske. It's really hard to get a read on them right now so early on in the season.
Yeah. Firstly, on Austin Cindric, it was basically the day that I kind of expected from him. I thought it was a lot asking a driver that is only in his second Cup start with a part-time team to go out there and really do anything more than what he did. And when you look, he still finished best of the rookies. When you look at Chase Briscoe finishing 23rd and Alfredo, of course, finishing 27th. So when you look at that, it's basically in line with what you would expect for young drivers. Even Christopher Bell, who has an Atlanta race under his belt and was amazing there in the Xfinity Series, a disappointing day back in 21st for him there as well. So young drivers, it's a difficult track for them to adjust to. It was basically in line with what I thought. But for the rest of the team, a very strange day where you wouldn't expect the 12 car to be that good, to get 57 points on the day with the win, and the rest of the team basically be complete non-factors even for a top 10. Very weird. Continues the theme of basically spin the wheel, and whatever Penske car you land on is going to be the top Penske car competing for the win. But very strange day in that sense. Because if you look at the Fords as well, next Ford wasn't even Kevin Harvick, who had his own issues. So today it was the Roush Fenway number 17 of Chris Buescher in 7th. Only had 3 Fords in the top 10 as a whole. So a very strange day for Penske there for sure.
Absolutely. Let's look at the second place organization here, Hendrick Motorsports. I mean, you gotta feel really, really good, to be honest, if you're Hendrick Motorsports. Chase Elliott aside, you look at the other 3 cars remaining in the race, all top 10s.
Well, to that point, Chase Elliott before that as well came from the back and got stage points and was looking strong for a top 10 before. Obviously, he had his engine issues, but not too shabby day for not just Hendrick, but the ECR engines as well, with Austin Dillon up there in 6th.
Absolutely. We can tie them in, I guess, with this one, because it is the Hendrick mold. We don't necessarily talk about RCR too much on this show, but Kyle Larson, we've talked about him enough. I really want to talk about Alex Bowman here. Where did this come from?
No kidding.
I mean, I had him as a stay away from,
and it making me look like
a dummy
at this racetrack.
I hate it. I absolutely hate this segment. I don't know why I do it anymore. It's bitten me in the butt so many times.
I want you to do that segment first, so I know who to put in my fantasy lineup.
essentially that's what it came down to. I had 2 guys that I had to stay away from. I only had 3 from this past week, and 2 of them were in the top 5 at one point in this race. Nonetheless, Alex Bowman, what an exceptional run. His best performance of the season by far. And he said it after the race. He needed a clean race, nothing go wrong for once for the 48 team. Yeah. I don't know if he's necessarily – I think the speed's been a little bit off from the 48 car as well, just mistakes. Yeah, but I think this is a huge weekend here for that 48 team. We saw it last year on the mile and a half. He was exceptionally good to end the season. And I think they're starting to find their groove a little bit now. Hendrick Motorsports is back, ladies and gentlemen. If you hadn't heard already, Kyle Larson is making that team a full horse
3 finishers, 3 in the top 10.
Exactly. And William Byron, you can't look past this guy right now. I mean, the numbers here before were
again, that's the
pretty mediocre. And now this guy, when you look at Homestead too, the numbers weren't that great for him. He's had a little bit of bad luck there early on in his career. But nonetheless, these guys are consistently getting top 10 finishes. Byron's speed was really, really consistent throughout the entire day. I think at some point he was top 5. Top 10 basically the entire time. The 24 car, you got to feel so good if you're Rudy Fugle as well, making that risk and that step to bring up a Truck Series crew chief traditionally up to the Cup Series and excelling like this. I mean, it's just incredible right now. And of course, we talked about Chase Elliott here a little bit. He had a good run starting at the back for failing pre-race inspection, a couple of times again for the second straight week. Did he go unapproved adjustments last week? This time he fails pre-race inspection. That's what it is. It's all over the place with Hendrick Motorsports.
Whatever, they just like starting somebody at the back.
Essentially, and it's usually somebody in our lineups. But Chase Elliott, disappointing day overall. Home track, obviously, he gets a second opportunity a little bit later on in the summer to come back and try and avenge that. I think he probably will. The 9 car here is just a little bit off from what I expect from Chase Elliott on a traditional sense, but Hendrick Motorsports brought a superior package basically to the entire field this weekend, consistency-wise. And, I mean, what more can you say about that entire organization to start this season?
Yeah, the big thing for me is, as we kind of alluded to, Bowman and Byron both didn't have top 10s at this track going in, and Bowman goes up and finishes 3rd. Byron just consistent all day in kind of that 7th to 10th range. Like, those are some really, really impressive results when you look at how much they've struggled there in the past, those 2 drivers specifically. So if they're going out and getting top 10s at mile and a halves that they haven't been good at, well, what can we expect from them at mile and a halves where they have been good? Exactly. Yeah. And so very, very promising signs here early on from Hendrick, specifically at mile and a halves. We'll see if that continues over 750 horsepower tracks as well. We saw it a little bit at Phoenix where they were able to come through the field, but once they got there, they weren't really able to break through into that kind of top 5, top 3 group. So we'll have to wait and see for that. But basically as good of a start to the season as you could have hoped for Hendrick. Austin Dillon getting up there in a very solid top 10 as well. And if you look on the fringes,
so bad.
If you look at the fringes of the top 10 as well, a guy who had some sneaky value coming into this race, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., another 12th place finish, super consistent to start this year. And Ross Chastain, Chip Ganassi, that 42 car has been a roller coaster the last year, of course, but 14th on the lead lap. I think that's a really strong result for Chastain to start the season. Top 20 in points as well to start this year. Hasn't had a great result yet, but nice and consistent is basically what you would hope for. Just kind of stabilize that 42 team and then try and find some of that pace again. So a really solid day. Also, I think we should mention them here as well, just kind of get all the Chevys out of the way. Daniel Suarez was up there inside the top 10 for much of this day with a backup crew chief as well, because Travis Mack was suspended. Goes in there. Great strategy call. Get them in the top 10. Unfortunate to have the speeding penalty on the last pit stop, and still finishes well inside the top 20, 17th place, 1 position behind 23-11 as well. So that rivalry keeps going. But that's the kind of day that team, even though they don't get the finish they deserved, that's a momentum building kind of day. So really excited to see Trackhouse have such a strong day as well.
Absolutely. All those names you just mentioned there kind of blew me out of the water really in this one.
Chevy as a whole had a really strong day.
Absolutely. Did not get the victory when you look at how many cars ran so well. It's disappointing on the manufacturer front. But Austin Dillon, I thought he was going to be really good this weekend. I really wanted to put him in my fantasy lineup, but you damn bugger made me with your strong lineup, it seemed.
You should have gone with some of the underdog picks.
I should have gone with the underdog. Yeah. This is the problem that we had coming into this weekend was, do we go with the big dogs? Because the numbers usually suggest that. But we had a couple weekends here with the big dogs coming to play. it just seemed like it was time for a couple of the
To be fair, the big dogs did show up. We just picked the wrong ones, except for the top two. The top two we got at least, but
I guess.
No, even
Dillon,
Stenhouse has had really strong numbers at Atlanta in the past.
Yes,
another strong run for JTG there, and just outside the top 16 in points right now because of Chris Buescher's really strong day. But the Hendrick ECR engines looking pretty damn good to start this year, especially on the 1.5 miles.
Yeah, Daniel Suarez, what a great run for him. I mean, that's the best run they've had, obviously, so far this season, speed-wise. And I would say that, I mean, apart from, I guess, Phoenix last week, where Bubba Wallace showed some glimpses in there in the top 10, I think this is arguably even more impressive than that this week with Trackhouse. Sure. I mean, getting in the top 8 there, I think at one point right there. I mean, that's really legit
strategy
speed.
Call it impacted that as well, deciding to take tires after a half lap, which is the most Atlanta thing possible. Literally, like
you lose grip when you leave the pit stop
corner, and exactly. I guess we used to say after one lap you come down and take tires. Well, now it's as soon as you leave the pits you come and take tires. But as we kind of mentioned, paint scheme's looking fantastic as well on that 99.
We nailed that when we said that early in the season when they released them. Like, oh yeah, they've nailed it. Like they nailed it.
Looks good. And also Suarez, we'll mention it more later in the week, but he's going to run the truck dirt race as well with the L2 team, so that'll be fun as well. But definitely a lot of momentum to build off of for that 99 Trackhouse team.
Yeah, just ECR Hendrick Alliance right now is just ridiculous. They are off to an incredible start. I don't know how many guys do they have in the playoffs right now. If it were to end right now with the amount of with this package,
six races, how many would they have in there? Well, you've got Larson, of course, Byron, Elliott, Austin Dillon, Alex Bowman, Kurt Busch. So those would be the ones. 6.
Stenhouse
would be just on the outside. Priest
right on
would be on the outside.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, it's still really, really solid. I mean, I'm thoroughly impressed with what they're bringing to the track week in and week out. Like, this is just a huge
Austin
stepping
Dillon's
stone.
Been the big one for me. I expected RCR to be strong this year. I expected it more from Tyler Reddick, to be honest, but Austin Dillon's
rough
just
start
been super
for him.
Consistent start this year. Yeah, one guy we're not talking about right now, Tyler Reddick, with all the Chevys, because ran into the wall early on, kind of screwed over the rest of their day. So they need to find something here. They weren't able to kind of build off of that really strong result at Homestead so far, but we'll see how things go from here. But yeah, very strong day overall for the Chevys.
Yeah, that's his only top 20 of the season for Tyler Reddick at Homestead. Yeah. It's been really rough going for that 8 team, but
he's way back in 28th in points.
Yeah, really tough start to the season, but we'll see if he can get it right back on track. Has some success on the dirt, so we'll see if they can maybe find something here at Bristol next weekend. But let's look at the Toyotas. What a weird day for them as well. I mean, Denny Hamlin had the issue there on the restart, so that kind of sent him back in the pack. It was definitely a lot. The gap just got spread out by so much over the course of a run. It was really difficult to make up spots, and we saw that with Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch, both getting top 5 finishes at the end of the day. I was super impressed by Kyle Busch in this one. I got to be completely honest.
Speeding penalty on the last go around and still.
Oh my God! I think he had a shot to win this race if he doesn't do that.
I think it would have been the 3 of them looking for the win there.
Absolutely. I think he had a top 3 car, and that setback there on that speeding penalty, he never recovered to the full capacity. He had a top 5 car 100%. Whether they would
he got the top 5 even with the speeding penalty.
I know. So. It was. You just wonder, man. It's just these kind of races you got to capitalize.
It's so strange because they'll have races where all the numbers point towards them being fantastic, and then they don't. So then the next time, like with Phoenix,
you're cautious, right? You're
exactly.
Like,
you go, oh, do I want to? And then they go and do it, and then they convince you, and then the next time you go and put them in, and then it's the same thing. It's like this damn roller coaster.
I know. If I literally had Kyle Busch and Kyle Larson, who I said on the last episode I had in my lineup, I mean, like, what the hell? Like, I mean, it's just so frustrating sometimes when the number.
I don't even want to know where my fantasy rank is right now. It's going to be horrendous.
Mine's really bad too. I have 4 different accounts going.
So
I know I have 4 different accounts going, and the ones that I don't do specifically for this one are doing better than the one that we focus on for this show. So just pure luck of the draw right now. But the entire Toyota stable, I mean, I'd say overall, you're wanting a little bit more. You just not quite there.
And
Kyle Busch was absolutely the best one.
You would really expect for Atlanta as well. Truex kind of had a mediocre day. Bell was a non-factor all day.
Disappointing day for Truex.
Hamlin was a weird one because his numbers have been either hit or miss at Atlanta, and he had another quiet top 5 day where you never see him and he still gets
it's
the top
the same
5.
thing. Not race winning, but 3rd to 5th again.
Exactly.
Right? It's not.
And sorry, Kyle Busch had the best car of the Toyotas all day by having the speeding penalty and still getting the top 5. So would have been interesting to see how he kind of got up there at the end if without the penalty. But definitely not the day that you were maybe anticipating for Toyota when you look at Truex not being much of a factor for the win. Hamlin even not really contending for the win, even though he was kind of in the top 5 most of the day. And then Kyle Busch having his own issue. So not the high end, once again, from Toyota. They've kind of had one car be that like race winning potential car. And this time it was Kyle Busch who had a speeding penalty, wasn't able to go out there and maybe compete for the win. But it seemed like every week they've had one kind of off from where you would expect, one solidly inside the top 5, which is usually Denny Hamlin, and then one of them kind of going out there with race-winning pace. So it's been a weird mix for Toyota so far.
Yeah, like you said, Truex, I mean, I was pretty disappointed by what the 19 car was able to do. I mean, basically, did he get any stage points in this one?
A couple.
Got a couple. He got a couple. He got 7th in stage 1. That was it. Like that's not what we expect from the 19 car. When he had the second best averages here, was the fastest car here last year.
As we mentioned last week, both with Cole Pearn and James Small, 2 different crew chiefs, had the fastest car at Atlanta the last 2 years. Definitely didn't bring the same thing this time around.
No, and then Christopher Bell, real big letdown for me this weekend. I really thought the 20 car was going to be something pretty special.
He's a weird one. Yeah,
I don't know what to think because this is where you kind of see the similarities to Homestead, and here the 20 car struggled at both high-wear racetracks, mile and a half.
Yeah,
disappointing. But when you look at Vegas, he had a really strong run. So it's just gauging what the 20 car is. You kind of know what they are now, a little bit off on some tracks, better on others. And this weekend they just missed the setup, and unfortunate for Christopher Bell ending up 2 laps down, got behind early on, getting a lap down on that first run. I think they had a top 15 car by the end of it, but they just got trapped the lap down and
just could never get it back with every single big long green flag run. More and more cars going 1 lap down, and eventually they ended up getting trapped 2 down, and by that point there's just no recovering. So by the end it seemed like they made enough adjustments to where they were more competitive than that, but just early struggles kind of trapped them there.
Yeah, the long stages don't help when you have a poor first stage and you are slow. It's very difficult to make that back up, especially in Atlanta when there's no cautions. I mean, I think it's probably between Harvick and Bell who stayed in the free pass position the longest in this one. It was excruciatingly painful. You look for a debris or something at some point in time, but nobody was doing that today. Or on Sunday, excuse me. So, disappointing day for Christopher Bell. Bubba Wallace finishing 16th there for 2311 Racing. Was about around that position the entire day. I swear he was like the average running position had to be like 16th to 17th place because it was right there the entire time, finishing 1 lap down at the end of the day, but slowly improving, getting their nose up there a little bit more consistently. Hopefully by the end of the season, we're seeing them regularly in the top 10. They're progressing that way. Just going to take some time here. And I think by the summer months, they'll start to find their way, as did the 95 car, essentially what they are technically right now, I would say. They struggle a little bit early on, then they find their speed a little bit later on. But overall, Toyota, you kind of just take some positives from this one. I think specifically the Kyle Busch pace and how strongly he performed in this one. You just try and bottle that up and take it to the next mile and a half, which is, I believe, Kansas, if I'm not mistaken, Charlotte, something like that. I can't think of any others off the top of my head, but nonetheless, it's totally a different kind of track than what Atlanta is. So,
Kansas is the next one, and it's wild, May 2nd. So
they have a month here.
We got quite the stretch here. A little over a month. But we got quite the stretch here. I completely forgot because we got Bristol Dirt, followed by
Martinsville, and Talladega,
followed by Richmond, followed by Talladega. So we might have a couple of angry drivers over the next couple of weeks here, given those tracks.
Yeah, that's going to be quite the short track swing, if you want to call it here. And this weekend is just going to be nuts. Oh, my God. I get a headache just thinking about it. But, that's Toyota for this one.
Yeah.
We talked about quickly on Chris Buescher. I imagine he may maybe make an appearance a little bit later on in the show. I don't know, but we'll see. We'll see on it. So I don't know how much you want to harp on him, but exceptional run. We saw him win a stage at Homestead. what we categorize as a little bit of a similar track. We talked about that on the show, obviously. But top 10 here for Roush, I mean, that is exceptionally well. And, of course, here with Ryan Newman in 13th. That is but this is the thing with Homestead, right? They both had really good runs, and they translate here. Like, it is crazy how sometimes they add up and sometimes they don't. But Roush is starting to add up here on these mile and a halves, and this is a exceptional run for both cars here at Atlanta.
Yeah, a fantastic day for them, and kind of start to see maybe a little bit where they've really put their emphasis on their package this year, looking at maybe specific tracks or specific package, and really focusing there as to where they want to maximize their efforts and go out and have that kind of competitive pace or anything like that. Because you look back to Phoenix, and both of them were nowhere near.
Nope.
Like, Ryan Newman was like competing with like the back markers, for crying out loud, for much of that race. And even at a track like Las Vegas, where Busch was top 15, Newman was top 20, they were decent there, but it seems like they've really dialed in on these kind of high wear tracks and really, really have a strong package there, which is awesome to see for Roush. And it's great to see some of those kind of mid-pack teams go up there and compete legitimately for top 10s. And Chris Buescher got some solid stage points, a really good finish, and he's currently in the top 16 on points. And that's exactly what you got to hope for if you're that 17 team.
Yeah, and disappointing year last year by Roush's standards, what we saw them in 2019.
Yeah, I had
they're better than
I had Buescher making the playoffs.
You did.
I thought they would be super consistent. I liked Buescher as the addition. They kind of fell flat last year. Obviously, after the Daytona 500, you can understand some of the struggles there, but really seemed like they struggled with the lack of practice and adjusting with Buescher over there. But seems like a year under their belt, they're more familiar there, and seems like they're building on some strong stuff now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, this is hopefully a sign of things to come. We would love to see Roush Fenway Racing return to some glimpses of what they were back in the olden days. I mean, God, I miss when Roush was competitive and they had all those 5 cars at one point. Like, that was just incredible. But
hey, listen, just a quick aside. You bring back a third Roush car. Which number do you pick?
Well, you can't pick the 99.
Yeah, true.
So what is left? I guess.
16 technically, but
16, 97 and
then the 99 would be the last one.
Yeah, I mean, you probably would bring back the 16 if I'm them, but because the 97 is just too old. But I think 16 if you were to bring a third car back.
I would love to see the 97, but I think probably 16.
I mean, I personally, I would love to see the 99 back at Roush, but
that too. But
just can track those switch numbers, because I would really love to see the 99 back at Roush. But LeBron James also in the news there, being a co-owner.
How about shoehorning that one? That storyline.
It all worked at the end of the day.
LeBron beating MJ with both of his cars this weekend. Storyline. No.
Underlying, I don't think they're talking about it enough. But yeah, it's just it is really great to see Roush back to somewhat of what we are accustomed to seeing back in the early 2010s and late
Newman
2000s.
A bit of a dirt guy as well. Interested to see maybe how they do. I am
super pumped to see how Newman does, because this would be a race. If Newman were to win, oh my God, the playoffs are gone. Man. They're done. They're up in the air. But let's look at another Ford team here. Stewart-Haas Racing.
Talk about going to the other end of the spectrum here.
Yeah, I don't know how to feel about this one, because
is it panic button time?
Not for the 4-car yet, because they battled their way back. They used proper strategy and they got a top 10 at the end of the day. Yeah. I think if you get some cautions falling in that final stage, he does something with the end of the thing. And Ronnie Cho's obviously made huge strides. The car, I mean, that battle at the beginning of the race when he's trying to stay on the lead lap with Kyle Larson chasing him down.
Staying on the lead lap battle I've seen in a while.
Yeah, and of course Harvick, his issues.
The Suarez one was good too, though.
Yeah, very true. But Harvick's issues stem from obviously having a flat tire coming to the green on the restart after the competition caution. I mean, that's just a freak accident. There's nobody's fault at that. But then he stays on the lead lap, gets 4 tires, and kind of runs it out for the majority of that stage, and then ends up falling 1 lap down eventually to Kyle Larson's, basically dominance at that point. But, for Harvick, it was just a struggle from there. Couldn't quite get the cautions because Larson just kept picking him up and putting them down with laps and laps and laps. And Harvick would just keep on going further and further back with the lap cars, and then Finally, he got back on the lead lap after taking a wave around after a quick caution. So he got to salvage something at the end of the day, gets a top 10. I predicted him to win the race, obviously. A disappointing day by that standards and what we expect from Kevin Harvick here. But they did show me quite a bit in that last run that they were be able to work their way up to the top 10. Like, that's pretty impressive. When you look at the drivers he's around, though, you kind of expect him to pass these guys to get to the top 10. But at the end of the day, that's still progress, in my opinion. So if you get a caution, I think Harvick's a top 7 candidate for sure.
Definitely.
And I would have really, really loved to see what he could be able to do in that sense. But at the end of the day, disappointing for Kevin Harvick at a track he's super
solid
good
recovery
at.
is basically the most you could have hoped for after how things went early on, because we expected this to be very much a green flag race. It's not too often you get a ton of cautions at Atlanta here. But unfortunate day given the circumstances for Harvick, just battling back the entire race and salvages a top 10. But when you look at how things have kind of gone the last couple of weeks, especially at tracks that he's strong at, haven't had that race winning ability. Maybe had that today, but even then you're kind of stretching it a little bit. Top 5, I think, is probably closer to where they would have landed, but a solid top 10 recovery is what you basically had to hope for at that point.
And let's look down the running order for where the next SHR
Ways
car is.
Down.
What is going on?
The next one,
Cole Custer 18th, Eric Almirola 20th, and Chase Briscoe 23rd. Multiple laps down for Briscoe there with 2, and then Cole Custer and Eric Almirola with 1 lap down. So,
and those are all pace ones, right? They didn't have any issues that I know of.
Not that I know of. Bob didn't tweet out anything that I know of, but this is where you put the panic button. Chase Briscoe, a little bit, you're like, okay, rookie, first couple of races in the season. The 14 car was really, really good here at Atlanta last year. But it is Chase Briscoe getting accustomed to a Cup Series car, and it's a rookie. And we've seen them in the past. They don't make the playoffs usually. I thought he could, but now I'm like, that's probably not going to happen.
Of the few predictions that I feel good about this year, my SHR ones I'm feeling decent about at least.
Yeah, for right now, it's, I'd put the panic button on the other guys because nobody
especially
is near
number
close
10.
enough. Yeah. That's one that really pops out at you because, with 2 rookie-ish, Cole Custer second year, Briscoe rookie. Eric Almirola is the second guy there. Well, at least he should be. And he's been borderline 4th this season. I don't know what to think from the 10 car. We both predicted him to not make the playoffs because purely last year he got lucked out by the qualifying draw. We talked about that on so many times, and with this new formula it brings in pace, and that 10 car doesn't have any pace right now, and he's back in 20th place at the finishing order here. Where's he in standings? 26th in points. He's not making the playoffs unless he gets a win. There's no way he's pointing his way back into this just based off of this. Like, the 10 car is nowhere near close enough. I think SHR's issues go a little bit bigger than what the 4 car is right now. I think he definitely puts what is the flex seal on what that organization is, basically that 4 car, because winning so many races last year, the most in the Cup Series, then you look at what the rest of the team kind of did last year. It just kind of filled that gap with a flex seal, not sponsored by the show or anything like that. But you just stick that over top of the wound, and it just looks great from the outside. But when you look a little deeper, there is a lot of issues here with Stewart-Haas Racing that need to be addressed. And I think they're just hoping for the next gen car to really reset here, because they clearly don't have
That's
it.
What you got to hope for at this point. Yeah, you got to hope that they're putting a ton of R&D into that next gen car and kind of maybe writing this year off a little bit, with the exception of Harvick. That's what you got to hope for. But if you're
Harvick right now, I don't know.
But like, if you're somebody like Eric Almirola, who's in a contract year, who, if they do decide to go a different route, well, it's not looking too hot for you right now in terms of trying to go out and prove your worth to a different team there. So bad start to the year. Got to hope that they turn it around quickly, because you're already in a pretty decent sized hole in the playoffs. You're already looking at a race, if not more, gap between yourself and that cut line. 6 winners in 6 races to start the year as well. Trending towards much more of that as well later this year with some of the road courses. Of course, Bristol third, anything can happen. Still got a Talladega. Oh, and of course, Daytona season finale as well. So still a lot of chaos that could potentially happen with those.
Pocono. Oh, wait, sorry. No.
Hey, the fog could come in again. Fog could come in again. You never know.
Hey, I'm putting money on it right now.
You never know.
What are the odds?
Hey, you know what? No, I'm not gonna try and defend Pocono. No, I was gonna say, for like as dull of a track as it is, we have had at least some different winners. Like when you look at Blaney's first win in the Pusher Fog, but I'm not gonna make that argument. No, it's a dud. But hey, at least it's triangle. It's quirky, but yeah. But no. Tough sledding to start for SHR. Michael McDowell, another solid top 20 run for himself there, which is nice to see for the Ford camp. DiBenedetto, another strong points run for him, who's starting to turn things around and get back into that points chase there. But yeah, SHR, it's basically Kevin Harvick, who's been solid to start the year. He's good maybe, but not to the level that you would expect. But
not last year.
When you look at the rest of SHR, like they're among like the lower tier of all the Ford cars right now, which is not something that you would really anticipate saying.
No, absolutely not. So a lot of questions to be answered here with SHR over the next couple of weeks, especially. You kind of look past the Bristol Dirt, but then once we get back on the short tracks here with Martinsville and Richmond, then that's totally a different kind of element that we haven't seen this season. And if they're struggling there, then they've struggled basically everywhere to start this season. And that's not a good sign for that camp. So yeah, that does it for really the breakdown of this race. Not too much going on. Lots of green flag running, to say the least. An exciting win there for Ryan Blaney to end it all. And I come away victorious with the fantasy by the slimmest of margins once again. But we are tied head-to-head, 3-3,
at least
after
that's
6 races this season. So we are staying a bit more competitive this season. I'm not pulling away.
Whoa.
You're not pulling away.
I was a rookie last year. Cut me a break.
Hey, I'm not too
technically I'm a champion if you go by NASCAR rules.
No, you're not doing this again. You're not doing this again.
I'm doing it
We're not doing this whole season.
NASCAR. All right. NASCAR rules.
Who won this past week, Kyle?
Fair enough. You did.
All right, there we go. Yep. So now we go to Bristol Dirt, and that should be fun. But like we said, we are watching practice, and we're talking about practice here. We need to get a gauge here.
I did look at it a little bit. I've got 6 names written down as like maybe depending on pace, but
I'm nowhere near that right now.
I literally just like looked at like dirt guys who maybe have run the Truck Series race. I'll be honest.
Yeah, it may bring out the randomizer.
I would love to see that.
My oh my, how the tables. Yeah, turntables. The office quote, obviously.
There we go.
That was good.
There we go.
I messed it up there, but
100% of the shots you don't take.
Essentially, that's what it comes down to. But yeah, that's the breakdown of the Atlanta race for the first time this season. We'll bring it back a little bit later on over the summer months in July.
Regular
which should be
season as well.
A big one during the summer
as well.
400 totally different
miles,
track
right?
positions.
Not 500. So
yes.
I don't know. Do you want to talk about that quickly? Race length at all?
Yeah, we can if you want. It's just a little too long for Atlanta because the race pace just slows down so much over the course of a run. It feels worse.
Like I get the history. Like I get 500-mile races and everything like that. The history.
Would you repave Atlanta? That's the big question.
No. I would not.
No. You wouldn't repave it now?
No.
Not before the next gen car?
No.
Not right now, obviously, but after the summer race.
I would need a legitimate, like, 100% reason, safety issue, like something along those lines. Like, I would need something like that. Like, we want unique tracks, and right now we have a unique surface here. There's no reason to go and pave it over, in my opinion, at least right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great racetrack. Like, the drivers seem to really love it. It really, with this package, it really just diminishes that really having an impact per se because, the tires fall off and you're not full throttle throughout the entire corner. It does come down to handling at this track specifically. And it's obviously a great thing to see. I mean, Todd Gordon in his post-race press conference was like, don't repave it. Never repave it unless it's basically coming up from the ground underneath.
Exactly.
That's what it comes down to because it is a totally different kind of track than what even at Homestead is right now on the Cup Series calendar. It's so much more abrasive with the tires, and it is nice to have that. We've seen what NASCAR does with repaves in the past. It usually sucks.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Like we complain about the repaves, and then we get these old tracks with 1 stuff, and then the people are like, "Oh, repave it!" Like it's Like, figure it out. Like, it's not it's not difficult unless there's a safety issue. There's no reason to repave it right now. I think the one thing I will say about the race length is it does feel really long. Every day I'm closer and closer to the argument where the 500-mile races should be the crown jewels, and then everything else should be like 400 or less. Like, I really don't see why we need to keep the Atlanta race 500 miles. I think we'll maybe get an idea for it in the second Atlanta race at the 400 miler and see maybe if that's something that we should go for both, or maybe make it like 500 kilometers, something along those lines. But 500 miles did feel really, really long.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. It just dragged on, especially when you don't have any cautions. Like, you're just like, just give me a little something more here. But, with the race being so long, you think, there's so much time for something to happen, but never really did. So I do think, I don't know if I'm to the extreme where all races need to be under 400 miles, but I think Atlanta specifically should probably be 400 miles.
Yeah, it's more of a case by case.
But if it were to go back to, I know, even if they repave this thing, don't put it at 500 miles. It's going to be even worse then. Don't do that. What am I thinking?
Don't repave it.
Yeah, essentially. Like, I would honestly just leave it at this point. It is just a great racetrack. So if they gave us the 750 low downforce package, it would have been even better. But, what the heck?
What, throttle response and driver ability? No way.
Never heard of her. So yeah, that's basically.
Like, if you're gonna get it, okay. I don't want to spend like a ton of time on it because it's the same thing every single time. But if you're gonna have races that get strung out anyways, make them faster. Like, it's not difficult.
You're basically, if it was 750, it would be about an hour or less, basically. It's just
like I want to see cars go fast, and 550 horsepower package isn't like, if you're gonna get the same like 5-6 seconds gap, at least make them faster. That makes it more entertaining. But I digress.
He digresses, ladies and gentlemen. That is Kyle's tangent for the week. He gets the honors of that one.
Actually, I might have another one coming.
Oh, is it going to be the with the what later?
No. This is one that I don't think you're expecting, is what I'll say.
Okay, well, it's not split it with the grass, then. That's basically what I was inferring there. But nonetheless,
there's a couple different roads it could have been, if we're being honest.
Yeah, but that's the kind of race breakdown here. Let's look at the notable finishers here relatively quickly. In this one, obviously, we've talked about the top 10 pretty much at length here. Matt DiBenedetto in 11th there, behind Kevin Harvick in 10th. Solid run for the 21 team. Needed this just to get consistently, and was in the top 5 at one point in time in that second stage. So he had some speed, fell off as the race went on, but still 11th place is really, really solid for him. Stenhouse obviously in 12th, Newman 13th, Ross Chastain 14th. We talked about him a little bit. I think that's a good run for him. Ran the Truck Series race on Saturday. I think that really helped him for the Sunday race. And anytime you get seat time, I think it just really, really helps. And when you have no practice right now, any seat time is beneficial, especially for Ross Chastain in the Cup Series right now. Top 15 ahead of Joey Logano in 15th. That's really, really solid for the 42 car, which has actually done pretty well around here traditionally at Atlanta. So good to see him step up to the plate here this past weekend. Bubba Wallace in 16th. Daniel Suarez in 17th. Good runs for them. Suarez obviously deserved better, but the speeding penalty hurt him at the end of the day. Bell in 21st, Cindric 22nd, Brad Keselowski all the way back in 28th in this one after falling those laps down. So disappointing day for the 2 car. Thank God we saved a usage on him. Good Lord. But yeah, you just put this one, you toss this one up and throw it in the garbage bin if you're the 2 car, and then you just come back and see what you can salvage here at Bristol.
In the bin. Oh.
And then we talked about Michael McDowell, obviously there in 19th as well. That was a good run for him, but they were multiple laps down, so I didn't want to mention them too much, because if you're multiple laps down, it's not, it's not a notable finisher in my opinion, but nonetheless we have
kind of crazy though when you think about that, right? Like, if we're looking like
so many laps down,
even like last year at times a top 20 finish for Front Row Motorsports, we're shouting them out pretty big time, and now we're like, oh yeah, multiple laps down, 19th place finish, that's nothing for this team now.
Exactly.
Kind of crazy. The difference.
The standards have changed after a Daytona 500 victory. Let me tell you.
That's
Chase Elliott there in second to last in 38th, and then Kurt Busch and 39th. So yeah, 2 guys for Kyle and his fantasy lineup there. Disappointing. I'm sorry, pal.
That happens.
Racing, it's just bad luck.
Racing.
That is racing. So that's the notable finishers for the Cup Series race in Atlanta. Cush's threes. Take it away.
All righty, we begin with the Cup Series, and you did guess it correctly. We begin on the positive side in the Cup Series. Chris Buescher gets the shout out. He gets the finish he deserves. Finally, obviously at Homestead, deserved the finish much better than what he ended up getting there. This time, runs solidly all day long and is the number 2 Ford car in this race. Awesome job by the 17 team, Roush Fenway having 2 top 15 cars, but especially Chris Buescher going up there, getting a massive points haul back inside the top 16 in points. Great run for them here in this one. To the Xfinity Series, and I'm going to a guy who was really, really close to getting like a really strong run inside the top 10, got into an incident, but still recovered in this one. And that's Jeremy Clements. I'm looking to. A lot of the attention so far this season, thank you, has gone to Brandon Brown, and rightfully so far this season. He's got a great story. He's had some great results. But Jeremy Clements is ahead of him in points, and he's actually 9th in points to start this season. He's got 3 top 10s in 6 races so far this year. His best in his career in the Xfinity Series is 5, and that happened last year, and he's already got 3 in 6 so far this season. Another very strong run for that small family-owned team. It's been great to see them after what was a bit of an up-and-down season last year where they had their best ever in top 10s, but overall had some issues and ended up missing out on the playoffs by a decent margin. Great to see them out of the gate really, really strong to start this season, and haven't gotten the amount of love that I would maybe expect for a small team doing that well so far this season. So I want to give them a shout out. And maybe a little bit similarly, somebody who had a strong run over the weekend, but I think is more deserving of attention over their entire kind of span so far this season. And I'm looking at Carson Hocevar in the Truck Series for this one. A solid run in this one. East Motorsports in general was pretty strong in this one with some solid runs, but I'm looking at Carson Hocevar for this one. If I were to tell you he is the youngest full-time driver in the Truck Series, would you believe me? I hope you do, because it's correct. He is the youngest full-time driver in the Truck Series this year. He was barely eligible for the full season. He's just barely 18. His birthday is January 2003, January 28, 2003. So he's barely old enough.
A 2003 kid is in the Truck Series,
running full time. The only 2 younger drivers to race in the Truck Series so far this year than Hocevar is Jet Noland, who also, funny enough, did a race for Nice Motorsports, and of course Sam Mayer. The youngest guy full-time in the Truck Series, and right now he's 10th in Truck Series points and 9th among playoff eligible Truck Series drivers, because of course Enfinger running for points in trucks but is not playoff eligible because he missed a race because of his weird schedule this year. But Hocevar, he's the top Nice Motorsports truck on points so far this year. He's been very consistent, has the 1 top 10 at Daytona, but overall has had really strong runs to start this year. Given his age as well, figured he deserved a shout out as well with a 12th place finish at a track that is very difficult for young drivers. So that's Cush's threes on the positive side. Let's get negative now. And the first one is pretty straightforward. It's SHR as a whole. We mentioned it quite a bit already, but 3 cars that you would expect at least inside the top 15, all well outside the top 15. Veteran driver of Eric Almirola, barely in the top 20. I think it was, a 20th place finish for him. Not good enough from that team. And even with Kevin Harvick, started with some solid pace, fell off a little bit, went the lap down, of course, had all the issues. Harvick was not happy about the car there. Recovered to a 10th place finish. No, not at all. Recovered to a solid finish, but there's some worrying signs for that team early on this season, and they need to start figuring things out quickly if they're going to have more than one car make the playoffs here. Xfinity, we texted about this one already. This one's pretty straightforward. Brett Moffitt, pains me to do it, but that was a rookie-esque mistake. Kind of similar to what AJ Allmendinger in this one last week for wrecking Brandon Jones. Brett. Funny enough, Brandon Jones gets wrecked again, and the guy who wrecks him ends up on the negative side of Cush's threes. You think I'm a Brandon Jones fanboy or something, but that is definitely not the case. But no, for Brett Moffitt, just trying to do a little too much there. At the end of the stage, needs the stage points for the owner championship. You get what he's trying to do there. Turns the guy, though. And at the front of the field, was having a strong run, just something you can't do. And that's a tough look for that team. So unfortunate there. And finally, ending with the Truck Series here, I didn't really know what direction to go with this one. I ended up on this name, and I don't feel great about doing so because, as I mentioned, Atlanta is a really tough track for young drivers. But I'm looking at Chase Purdy for this one. Teammates finishing 5th and 6th. Penalty for Tyler Ankrum. He still recovered to an 18th place finish. Rafael Lessard had a transmission issue, so he finished 39th. But Chase Purdy, to my knowledge, didn't have any issues. He stayed out long on, I believe it was the last green flag run, and ended up finishing 23rd, which for a GMS truck at a track like a mile and a half where the top teams really come to play, their strengths are really kind of shown there. Chase Purdy just struggled all day. 23rd place finish isn't good enough for GMS. He's had a bit of a rough start to this year. You would expect that for a rookie, but he did run a handful of races last year with GMS. So unless I had missed something, in which case I apologize for that. Young driver, so you can understand it, but a disappointing day when he had some teammates have some really strong runs there. So that does it for Cush's threes. I was happy to give out a couple of shout outs there to Clemens and Hocevar, who've just not been talked about enough, in my opinion. I hate doing the negative side, but you got to even it out, I guess.
Yeah, those are good ones. I agree with all the ones this week. I agree with you on all 6.
I like how you added in the qualifier of this week.
But. Yeah, this week I can get behind Cush's threes. Okay. I can't say that every week, but the majority of the time I do, and this is definitely one of those weeks. So props to you on that one.
Thank you.
All righty, Trucks or Xfinity first?
Do we want to rate the Cup Series race first?
Oh, of course, we have to. It's a tradition now.
Okay.
Out of 10. Do you want to go first for this one?
Sure, I'll go first. I think the finish. Where do I want to go with this? The finish redeems it a little bit. Overall, the race was pretty dull. One thing, and this is the little tangent that I was mentioning earlier.
Here we go. Get the popcorn.
Is TV, and this is what it is. Just showing just one car running by itself way too much. And when you look to other series, and the example that I'm pulling from this weekend is Supercars, because I wanted to watch Sandown, at least one of them this weekend, and Shan Van Gisbergen is a god this season. He's insane. He has a broken collarbone, and he's still 5 for 5 to start the season. He's insane. But the fact that during those races, sprint races, so 36 laps, tight racing the entire time, and they still cut away to passes for 14th, passes for 15th. As a 24-car field, they showed a pass for 18th during that race. They show action throughout the entire grid. And during these NASCAR races, it's basically either showing the leader, showing somebody in the top 10, or like maybe showing a pass once or twice throughout the race. It's just frustrating seeing something where you know that there's action going on throughout the field. It's just finding it. And a lot of the time I find TV doesn't do that enough. Even if it's like backmarker teams going and battling, I want to see on-track action, not just one car kind of riding by itself. So that's the little TV tangent for this one.
Wow.
Overall, that's a little sport media in me coming out. I'm sorry. But overall, where do I want to go on this one? It was long race, solid finish, but overall it was pretty dull. I'm going to go 5.5. On this one. I was thinking between 5.5 and a 6. I'll end up on the 5.5. Good finish, redeems it a little bit, but overall, long, drawn out, not a lot of action. 5.5.
Yeah, I was thinking the exact same number. So, I mean, I could probably give it a 5.5 too, to be honest. I don't want to give it that extra 0.5. I just can't.
I think if you're doing that, you're maybe putting a little too much value on the finish.
Yeah, I think so too. Just because it wasn't really a battle, it was great to see somebody come and catch the leader, but it was just over like that.
There wasn't a battle for it once they got there.
Exactly. So I'll give it a 5.5. When you look at the other 2.5 miles, I gave them both 8.5. So I really rate those two.
Yeah.
This was nowhere near that. That's definitely 3 marks off of that. So I have to use that as my scale kind of thing for now.
Right.
In my
That's
reference
the problem.
point.
We've set standards for ourselves now.
But I'm fine with those standards because I think those are really good races, right?
That's
so
true. That's true.
But yeah, this one definitely missed the mark a little bit, but it is Atlanta. I still enjoy going to Atlanta. It's just the length and not having these cautions.
I think the 5.5 is more on the car and the race itself rather than the track. Because good tracks are going to have meh races anyways. The length doesn't help here. The lack of cautions didn't help here. I don't think we're rating Atlanta a 5.5 or anything by that means.
No.
It's just kind of a victim of circumstance here.
Yeah, for sure. So that does it for the NASCAR Cup Series race from Atlanta. Good conversations in this one. Lots of back and forth.
Yes.
That was a fun little segment there for Atlanta. But let's get into quickly the trucks and Xfinity. Which one would you like to start off with here?
I like keeping things chronological. So let's start with trucks. Even though both were on the Saturday, we'll go beginning to end on the Saturday.
Yeah, that makes total sense. We're starting off with the
There's
Cup,
also a little
and
bit
then the
more
trucks,
to talk
and then
about for
Xfinity.
Yeah, well, you can't
We're all
start
over the
with trucks.
place.
You can't
But
start
yeah.
with trucks. But
Fair enough. Let's start with the truck series in this portion of the show. Kyle Busch is your victor, and this one gets his first victory of the season in the Camping World Truck Series, his 60th career victory in the series itself.
Still on pace to hit the 4 out of 5 that you had.
I needed it, man. I was cheering him on like I do every week, but still massively on this one. Really rooting for him for this one because I'm trying to back this statement up that it's 4 for 4.
What are the do you know the other 3 off the top of your head or no?
I know Richmond's one.
Okay, well that's
which
automatic.
No, I predicted that one that might not be the one
really?
that he gets the win at in the season preview, but I can't name their other ones off the top of my head. Enough. But he has a little bit of a break here, I think, before his next one. But statement win here for Kyle Busch, obviously getting out there and dominating this one.
Yeah.
John Hunter Nemechek wasn't really close to him in this one, I would argue, because even though he won both stages, Kyle Busch let him pass in the final couple of laps to get those actual playoff points.
I love gaming the system. I'm not going to
Beautiful. Yeah. It makes total sense. Our 2 race winner picks were right up there at the front. Obviously, I had first selection, so I'm going to pick Kyle Busch. But John Hunter Nemechek won here in the past, did a very good job, got a solid point stay out of it, finishing 3rd.
Points.
And
it's pretty all right.
You can't feel too bad if you're John Hunter Nemechek. And, he's not going to win every one against Kyle Busch. That's just not possible, I don't think, this season, just based off of, what we expect from
just gotta
the
be
51
close.
truck.
Like, people don't, like, he's not Kyle Busch. But no. You got to be close. Like, you can't be completely outclassed.
You're in the same
some of the
equipment,
other drivers
right?
Have been recently, and still ran second for much of this day. Ended up finishing 3rd behind Austin Hill, who had a quietly really, really strong day. Again, good to see that 16 truck back up at the front there. But Toyota's top 4 as well with Vittori, KBM, and then ThorSport as well with Johnny Sauter there. So, a strong day for Nemechek. I think the stage finish stuff, I don't know, there's not really much you can do there. Like, it's, if you're going to have the system be kind of a little bit silly like that, well, you're going to get a little bit of gaming in the system. I don't hate it. Don't hate the player, hate the game. So
exactly.
Yeah. But a dominant day for Kyle Busch, as you would expect here. A driver's track, tire wear being as big as it was. And last year was kind of a chaotic Atlanta race for the Truck Series. This one was much more tame.
Yeah, his 6th victory here at the track and the Truck Series as well. So just does a really exceptional job here of executing well. And Joseph was in a class of his own, really, on Saturday afternoon, and had a busy day for Kyle Busch. That was on Saturday after the race, flew to Bristol and did the Bristol Dirt Nationals, which was, I don't know if you got to be able to watch it at all, but it was pretty entertaining. I got to be honest. I watched the feature with the late models, and Larson was in that one, and Kyle Busch ended up advancing to that one, and Larson lost it on the final restart there, but the guy who won was just in another zip code. It was crazy, but just gives you a little bit of a sense of what's to come here next weekend for the Bristol Dirt. So, but yeah, Kyle Busch getting the victory here. Austin Hill, like you mentioned, in second. That is a phenomenal run for him. Has had a slower start to the season than we expect from the 16 truck. Really solid here, needed that, and now he can totally build off of this. Is a huge stepping stone. I expect the 16 truck to be really, really strong throughout the remainder of this season. I think we both had him in our championship 4, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know. Maybe you didn't. I think I did, but we were very close.
I had him out, and I went with the bold swing, and I had Chandler Smith in there.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think I have him in there because of last year's disappointment. I think the 16 truck will start to get him. I think he'll win a couple of races by the season, and the fact that he beat John Hunter Nemechek in this one is very, very impressive. And you gave a good shout last week. You thought the 16 truck would be strong. I don't know if I thought he was going to be this strong to finish second in this race.
Hey, we got the top 3.
Is best of the rest. Hey, I'll take that as a win.
I'm feeling good about that.
our 12 hours of Sebring predictions, but nonetheless, we will continue here. But KBM, solid day there for the front 2 there with the 4 and the 51. Chandler Smith had a whole bunch of issues in this one. He's just been all over the place kind of start this season, but I anticipate that they'll find their groove. It is a KBM truck at the end of the day. I wouldn't panic too much with Chandler Smith, but definitely the lesser of the three trucks right now, because the 51 truck who's ever been in it so far has done a pretty solid job in their races as well. So got to feel good if you're Kyle Busch right now, making that bet on John Hunter Nemechek over the offseason.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you can definitely see what those trucks are capable of when you give top-tier drivers those top-tier rides. And very nice to see that KBM is back and challenging at the front, because we did lack that a little bit last year. It was the GMS show. Now GMS is a little bit off to a slower start. KBM, Toyota has now made that step back out in front, I would say, for right now.
Yeah.
And then Johnny Sauter with ThorSport. They have been pretty solid compared to what I was expecting with that manufacturer switch over the offseason. Yeah. And Sauter was, I think, probably had a top 3 truck. He was just kind of mired back. It just never quite got the track position he needed. But that truck looked pretty strong, pretty sturdy throughout the entire day, consistently strong, had a nice balance, it seemed, just from the eye test. But top 5, huge momentum builder for that team. They really, really needed that after not making the playoffs last season. They need to just consistently get top 10s here, because that's the only way that they're going to really make the playoffs. They could win, don't get me wrong, but when you got Kyle Busch 5 races in the regular season, it is going to become to slim pickings at some point here with some of these guys trying to win races on a consistent basis.
Plus all the chaos that's going to be Bristol Dirt here as well.
And Knoxville most likely as well. So
yeah, I would expect less at Knoxville, but then again, it is Knoxville instead of Eldora.
Bristol Dirt's got like half a Cup Series down there, right?
Nuts.
Like
I'm nuts.
pumped for the Truck Series race. I cannot stress that.
I'm more excited for trucks than I am Cup, and I think that's not even close.
No, 100%. Me too. Because I don't have to worry about fantasy in that one. So, but yeah,
we don't have to make a winner pick though.
Don't even get me started. That's just too much anxiety that I don't need right now. But the GMS trucks there with Sheldon Creed and Zane Smith, they're 5th and 6th. Solid runs for them. Sheldon Creed was kind of back in the back half of the top 10 for much of this race, but ends up getting a top 5 out of it. So the 2 truck will definitely find its form, the defending champion. I'm expecting him to turn it around here relatively soon. Not to say that he's been off to a poor start this season, but not having that race win quite yet. Remember, it's only 4 races into the season. It's very, very young. They've had a couple of off weeks when the other series haven't. So still very early days for the Truck Series. So overall, not too much incidents in this race, Kyle. I don't know how much you got to see of it. Did you see the whole thing of it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It was just is what it is with Atlanta and the trucks. Yeah. Just a solid race. You expected domination from Kyle Busch, but you had the top guys just get some consistent points at the end of the day.
Yeah, some good racing throughout the top 10 as well, especially with guys like Ross Chastain coming up from the back, stuff like that. Brett Moffitt as well. So both Nice trucks coming from the back, of course, with Moffitt having like that last minute engine change, which was kind of weird there, but
I mean, Verstappen at Hungary last year when they had to change everything.
Yeah, exactly. So had some good racing throughout the field there for this one, but it's a track that you expect the veterans to show up, you expect the big teams to show up, and that's exactly what we saw in this one. Friesen had a great day in this one as well, had the penalty at the end. You need to stop cursing people. You witch. I don't get it, but super promising speed there that he might go up and upset the entire Cup Series field this weekend at Bristol Dirt. I hope. Obviously not in the Cup Series race. I mean, the Cup Series drivers in the Truck Series race.
I would love that.
But I mean, either of them would be great. But
sweeps the weekend, Stewart Friesen at the Bristol.
Could you imagine? Could you imagine? Well, I mean, I don't think the car is going to matter all that much this weekend. So
not particularly,
but. That'll be a fun one to watch at least, but no, good day for him. Still gets a top 10 out of it, but a big points haul I think is the important thing there. Looking further back, Hocevar, I already mentioned 12th there is a nice standout. Derek Krause, a nice kind of rebound day for him there. Kligerman in 14th, getting that top 15 run with Henderson Motorsports is great to see as well. The Fords, not really much from them this time. With as little in the field as there are as well.
Basically, across the board, they suck this weekend. Yeah. Except for the Cup Series they won. Like that is just
makes no sense, man.
My mind.
Yeah, that's an interesting one there. But no, overall, a meh Truck Series race in this one. But you kind of expect that when Kyle Busch was in the field. Had some solid racing throughout the top 10, so not too much to complain about, really.
Yeah, disappointing for Rafael Lessard back there in 39th. Just
transmission issue.
Bad luck, really, to start this season. Really needs to just try and get some consistent finishes here.
Also, shout out to Bill Lester before we move along. Didn't have a good run by any means, but when somebody's coming back after that long off, you don't expect it either. It was cool for David Gilliland Racing to go out there and give him the opportunity to do so at Atlanta. Just cool to see him back on the track. Wasn't competitive or anything like that, but kept the car clean.
Finished
the race. Cool story. So no complaints there for me.
Yeah, shout out there to Bill Lester. But that does it for the Truck Series. You don't need to spend any more time on that one. Congratulations to Kyle Busch on that victory there. Let's move to the race that just happened right after it on the Saturday, the Xfinity Series race. I mean, it seemed very similar to what we saw in the Cup Series with one guy dominating, but didn't end up being the case. The guy who leads the most laps does not end up bringing home the trophy. Martin Truex Jr. returns.
Maybe we should have thought that as a theme for Sunday, but
maybe you think, but it's just so hard to predict these things, as we've seen with our bonus picks. But Martin Truex Jr.
Hey, we did decent. We got Ford.
Oh yeah, in top Chevrolet, Kyle Larson. Oh my God.
Oh yeah, that one too. Yeah. That might be the best bonus points that we've had so far. 15 points.
Oh God. Yeah, the Xfinity Series race. Martin Truex Jr. returned to the series for the first time since 2010. Over a decade since he's been down here in the lower series. Welcome sight to see the Cup Series guys down in the Xfinity Series. But
simmer
Martin
down,
Truex
simmer
Jr.
down.
Sorry, I get too excited. Martin Truex Jr. put on a clinic. I think it was like 19th, the first, and 6 laps it was, something like that. Like ridiculous pace by the 54 car. And I mean, he led the most laps, 103 at the end of the day, but just didn't quite have it there at the end after having a speeding penalty. Oh man, these guys with speeding penalties. And it was very interesting because I listened to Truex's radio throughout the race, and when he had the penalties, like, oh, you're kidding me, like. But he said the bumps at the beginning of pit road there really got him, and you don't really factor that in, but the
different
dash is not
tachometer as well.
Yeah, and different carburetor as well with it. It's just a different kind of throttle system with the Xfinity car compared to the Cup car. So with no practice and everything like that, you probably wouldn't see that if there was practice and stuff like that. But with no practice, mistakes are bound to happen. And unfortunately for Martin Truex Jr., only recovered to get to second place. I say only, but he should have probably won this race. But he got, he got up there.
That final run, he had the laps to go down and run him down, Allgaier that is, but Justin Allgaier ran a perfect last few laps there, and Truex.
I thought he had him. I honestly thought he was going to catch him
a little bit by the last couple of laps and kind of fell off by the true end of things, but definitely wasn't expecting either Justin Allgaier or Junior Motorsports to go out and win here. It's been a while for them, Junior Motorsports as a whole, since they've won at a mile and a half here. So great to see Justin Allgaier get back in the win column here, hold off a veteran like Martin Truex Jr. there, a Cup Series guy coming down. Great to see that. And just great to see Junior Motorsports kind of bounce back here as well. No Gregson, who I'm sure we'll talk about more. Solid top 5 run. Michael Annett inside the top 10 as well. Josh Berry had his own issues as well, but nice solid day for Junior Motorsports here.
Yeah, absolutely. Justin Allgaier, congratulations on the victory there. Held off Martin Truex Jr. here, a guy that we thought could potentially win the Cup Series race the next day.
He was my pick.
Right? Like, I mean, I mean, he's so good around here. You'd think, this is an Xfinity Series race, he would just add to the win column, but not to be the case for the former 2-time champion of this series way back when. But congratulations for Justin Allgaier. He really deserved it at the end of the things. And the 54 car just kind of, as the 5 did in the Cup Series, fell off a little bit as the race went on. That's the problem with being the dominant car. Everybody's trying to catch you when you don't know necessarily what you have back in traffic or something like that. It's just a game of cat and mouse at that point in time. And Allgaier was exceptional to end that race and deserved the victory full-heartedly. So congratulations to Junior Motorsports and the 7 team. Harrison Burton there in third ran a very consistent race, was probably in the top 3 the entire race. Never really had I basically was just stayed in third. 2 guys came from behind him to pass him. 2 guys, went past him to go behind him. It was just kind of right there the entire day. So you got to feel really good if you're Harrison Burton to the start of this season. Very, very consistent so far. Where is he in the points? I know obviously Cindric is first, but
he's got to be decently up there.
Finishing third right now, 65 points off the top behind his teammate Daniel Hemric there in second, but nonetheless, third in points. I'm expecting big things from the 20 car this season after another season under his belt in this series, and finishing third at a difficult track like Atlanta. got to feel really good if you're Harrison Burton after this one.
Definitely.
Just right there in third. Just couldn't break that top two. Very much the Denny Hamlin of the Xfinity series right now, in the top five pretty consistently.
That's a good comparison.
Hasn't quite won, and JGR stable. Comparisons are there. Noah Gregson in fourth. What a race this guy had, hey? Got involved in that Brett Moffitt incident there. Had a pretty damaged car. I thought he was basically done for the day. But they made very, very good repairs to the car, made it drivable in a top 5 car here at Atlanta. That's very, very impressive from the entire pit crew and making adjustments from the top of the pit box. Noah Gregson obviously had his moments throughout this one, specifically on pit road multiple times in this one, but we can talk about that a little bit later on. And then AJ Allmendinger getting a top 5 here, won the race here last year, had a bit of an up and down day, I would say, for the 16 car, but manages to get a top 5 finish, and that's really, really good for AJ on these mile and a halves, and also the leading colleague car in the Xfinity Series race here as well. So that's really, really great for him. Riley Herbst finally gets some luck on his side, finishes a race here in the top 10. I think that's for the second consecutive week here, finishing 6th. So very, very solid for Riley Herbst here. Needed this run. Poor, bad luck, whatever you want to call it, had nothing to start the year. Now he's starting to find his form. Not obviously what we had with Chase Briscoe last year in the 98 car, not that race winning week in and week out, but still getting top 10s here is what he needs. A driver's racetrack. I like what I see from Riley Herbst after this weekend. Looking forward to seeing him in a couple weeks' time at Martinsville in the Xfinity Series race there. And Michael Annett, as you mentioned, they're getting a top 10. We both predicted him not to make the playoffs this season, but he's keeping his nose in that mix, man. He's just kind of plugging along, and he's actually stayed out of trouble a little bit more so than I thought he would this season. You know, when you look at Junior Motorsports' luck, it's been up and down to say the least, but it's getting a top 10 here at Atlanta. Bodes well for the 5 car. And then Justin Haley in 8th, just kind of a mediocre day, I would say. He was up in the top 5-ish, I think, at one point, but then fell back as the race went on. Daniel Hamrick, I was a bit disappointed from the 18 car this weekend after what we've seen so far to start this season. Definitely not the day we expected from him, and was probably the slowest of the JGR cars, really. I thought Brandon Jones looked pretty decent.
Brandon Jones was right up there. Obviously, that's why he got turned on the stage finish there. But, he's had such terrible luck, Brandon Jones has so far this year. But, interesting top 10, I think you can say. Ryan Sieg there in 10th, which we'll get to in a second. Great seeing him finally get up there and get a top 10 after what's been a rough start to this year. But the players you would expect to be in the top 10, but maybe not in the order you would maybe expect, with Annett up there close to the top 5, Justin Haley a little bit further back, similar with Daniel Hemric. But with some of the incidents you had earlier as well, with guys like Brandon Jones dropping out early, with some of the damage some of the other guys had, you can maybe see where some of that maybe differential would come.
Yeah, for sure. And then we look, obviously, Ryan Sieg in 10th. Holy smoly, this team. They just needed runs like this. They needed that
so badly.
Oh, my God. I feel so bad for their start to this season. Now, hopefully with this new manufacturer with them, they're starting to find a little bit of groove here. Obviously, a tough weekend for Ford, really, in this series. I mean, Riley Herbst getting 6th, but not the front-end speed. Cindric had issues with damage from that wreck as well. A lot of heavy hitters got taken out in that wreck and just really diminished their chances of having a shot at a solid finish in this one. Cindric finishing back in 13th. Mike Snyder in 11th. Decent run for him. He won Homestead, obviously. Was maybe expecting a little bit more from the 2 car, but at the end of the day, 11th place isn't too bad, and you're already locked into the playoffs. It is what it is. You're just trying to improve each and every week if you're Myatt Snyder right now. Jeremy Clements, you alluded to him in Cush's 3s, absolutely deserving, had a solid run going, finishing 12th in this one. I've been thoroughly impressed. He may be the shock of the Xfinity Series season so far for me, to be honest. I mean, he's just been really lights out, and we didn't see really any speed from the 51 car last season. And right now they're a frequent top 15, if not top 10 contender. Week in and week out.
Half of the time, and that's not even including this race where he finished 12th and was running inside the top 10 for most of the day.
Yep, and he's 9th in Xfinity Series points right now. That is very, very impressive. When you look what's behind him, you got some heavy hitters, obviously, but I mean, if you could be that one guy, we had a points guy we could maybe see him be that 12th guy instead of Ryan Sieg maybe this season, who had a very slow start. He's back in 20th in points. Quite the points margin that he's got to make up. It's over 100 points already on Jeremy Clements. So it's excuse me, that is 80 points, not 100 points. That's my mistake.
I was gonna let it slide, but
I want to be factually correct on this show. So, but yeah, 80 points. Still a lot of work to be done if you're Ryan Sieg, but this is a step in the right direction. That's for sure. So that's kind of like your really top finishers from this one. It was up and down day. You had some heavy hitters.
One more shout out. Landon Castle in 14th there.
Okay.
He's had a really consistent start to this year, up there in 15th/14th in points, whether you want to include Brett Moffitt or not. At 112 in points, that's 2 points back in Noah Gregson. And when you look at what some of the other JD Motorsports cars have done so far this year, they've been a little bit off the pace. So nice to see Landon Castle up there in the top 15 again. That's the last one I want to give a shout out to.
I'm going to give Santina Ferrucci as well a shout out in 15th. I'll give him – I mean, this guy's top 15 in every single race except for the first one. That's very, very impressive in my opinion for him. And for Atlanta being a tough racetrack as well for rookies, bravo, Santina Ferrucci.
I'm
Welcome
so
to
fascinated to see what that 26 is like when John Hunter Nemechek gets behind the wheel there. Because then we'll actually get
I wonder if it's like the 23 with Reddick. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
could
really
be similar situation.
Don't know what to really think about that team there, because they have some Toyota help this year. How much, we don't really know. So these 15th place finishes, we're reading them as really impressive right now. But if John Hunter Nemechek goes in there and wins in it, well, then we're going to look at these results a little bit differently. But no, Ferrucci, first races in a stock car and being top 15 in a really tough, tight mid-pack as well in the Xfinity Series, definitely deserving of the shout out. So I'll give you that last one.
All right. And then we have some poor ones. We can look at those quickly here. I wanted to start off with Jeb Burton back in 25th place. Man, I forget what happened to him.
Was he the incident with Clements there? Was he the one that got into him and then into the wall, I think?
Yeah, that was not great, to say the least, on that one. I'm trying to find if there's like a highlight here on Twitter, but nonetheless, disappointing day from Jeb Burton. We could be wrong on that. Saturday was a long time ago in our lives right now.
Oh my god!
Oh my god! It's been so chaotic with school, everybody. But nonetheless, Jeb Burton back there in the 20s, not indicative of what the pace was of that 10 car this weekend, I would say, but disappointing there. Mm-hmm. And then Brandon Brown back in 33rd, got involved in that incident there on that back straightaway.
Yeah.
Oh, I think he probably had a top 10 car again. It seemed pretty good to start the race. Disappointing result there for him, obviously. We talked about Brett Moffitt finishing last in this one. Josh Berry, oh my God, this guy cannot catch a break. He saves it off of turn 4 and the bloody grass. Oh, God. Can we get rid of it and just put turf down, please?
That car got air, man.
I'm surprised it didn't do a full backflip, because that thing went so far up in the air, and I've never seen the grass that high compared to the racing surface. Like, it was really, really bad. Thankfully, Atlanta made some adjustments overnight. Lo and behold, they didn't need it for the next day because nobody wanted to spin off a turn 4 for the Cup Series race because we have so much downforce on those cars. But Josh Berry, nowhere near indicative of where the pace is with him in his starts this season has had. There's been so much bad luck in the Xfinity Series. It's been great to see some names that we don't usually mention on a regular basis getting top 10s, but at the same time, you're like, these guys who have these such great opportunities right now are not quite getting the results that they ultimately deserve.
Yeah, with Josh Berry there especially, he's had such bad luck. I really, really hope, well, assuming – because we don't know what Dale Jr. is doing this year in terms of the race he's running.
No.
They haven't said anything. So I'm assuming Josh Berry's still running Martinsville.
I would love to see him at Martinsville.
I don't know what's happening there because Junior did talk about maybe running that Martinsville race. So I don't know what he's planning on running. All I do know is Josh Berry at Martinsville, I want to see because that guy.
A 6 car.
Yeah, it's actually a track that they go to in super late models. It's crazy. So it's a track he's going to be familiar with. It fits his driving style. I'm really excited to see because that's really where you get to see where he's at versus the rest of the field. The other mile-and-a-half stuff, even Phoenix as well, it's stuff that is kind of outside his wheelhouse. It's new to him. He's kind of learning it, so you'd expect him to be a little bit off the pace. Martinsville, that's the stuff you expect him to go out there and be a contender for the win. So I'm fascinated to see that come in a couple weeks. But yeah, for other guys like Brandon Jones, just terrible luck to start this year, and is still in a decent points position as well for Jones. It seems like he's either wrecked out early on or he's up there in the top 5 at the end of a race. So hopefully they can find some consistency and maybe kind of show where they're really at over the season. But yeah, definitely some rough luck to start so far this season for a handful of different people here.
Absolutely. So that does it for, I think, Atlanta for entirely here, except for our post-race debacle.
Shenanigans.
Man,
how do you want to attack this?
I don't know what to think on this one because
it's
oh my God, this. If you haven't seen it, it's basically everywhere because, as soon as there's a fight or a big accident racing,
it's the one time mainstream media talks about racing.
Holy smokes, it goes all over the place.
A dangerous crash or a fight. That's the two times they like us.
Yep. Twitter, Instagram, anywhere, you'll have it. They'll get notifications to you. It's just frustrating on that respect, but nonetheless, Daniel Hemric went in to Noah Gregson after the race for some issues that he did not like on pit road when Hamrick slid through his pit box, then went into Gregson's, and then Gregson kind of backed up into him. Not kind of, he did. He backed up into Hamrick and then allegedly gave him the middle finger. It seems that way from the pit box kind of can that they have there. So Hamrick was obviously very upset with Gregson for backing up into his stall. Could have injured a crew member. It's obviously not what you want to see whatsoever on pit road, especially when you have very vulnerable pit crew members out there, kind of risking their lives to an extent. It is a very dangerous job what they do, but people overlook that. And Gregson, getting into another scuffle this week, gets a top 5 at the end of the day, but still the issues here on pit road after the race cannot be overlooked. And Hemric went over to him, gave him a stern talking to say the least, pushed him out of a current interview that Gregson was in. They exchanged some words, punches were thrown. One was landed, I would say, with Hemric to Gregson, but other than that, it was just your typical NASCAR fight where nobody really gets anything.
I mean, Gregson landed a bit of a sucker punch on Hemric when he was.
It was close. I don't know if it necessarily did a lot of damage, but nonetheless, it is basically your NASCAR fight. It's not John West Townley there at a Gateway, but nothing could ever get that bad. But nonetheless, it was a scary incident on pit road, if you want to call it that, with the pit crew member. So how do you want to address this, Kyle? Because it's disappointing, to say the least, from Gregson, and just he's great for a personality for the sport. He brings a lot of energy. He's very lively. He's very passionate. He speaks his mind on a lot of things and how he's feeling. And obviously that Homestead issue, he had a lot of bad luck and said some things that, he probably regrets now looking back in hindsight.
I don't know if he regrets it, but he should.
He should regret them, is what it comes down to. But disappointing from Gregson here once again, just kind of getting a bit hot-headed and, just being a little bit careless in this situation. Yeah,
careless is the right word. It was something where Hemric made a mistake. He went too deep. He backed up. Gregson
apparently there was a lap car with Hemric there that we didn't see on replay, but
regardless, situation happens. Gregson has to back up, but it's the way it all transpired, right? It's the fact that he backed up all the way to hit Hemric's car, but that's kind of lesser to the point. The bigger point is that he put a bunch of crew members in danger. If anyone was coming across the front of the nose there when Gregson's backing up, that's a legitimate serious injury that you're looking at. So you just can't have stuff like that happen. As you kind of mentioned, pit crew members are putting their lives at risk. Just look at the Anthony Alfredo incident from the Sunday Cup Series race. That could have been much worse than what it ended up being. And it's a reminder as to why we have pit road speed limits as well. But just frustrating to see something like that transpire in the way that it did. And I was glad to see, honestly, Daniel Hemric stick up for his team members. It would have been easy for him to kind of let that go by and not kind of make it something more than it was. Maybe address it otherwise, but he went up and he stuck up for his team, and that was really cool to see. And we kind of saw it as well with Harrison Burton giving him the fist bump afterwards. It was great getting the close up of everything there with the interview camera right in it. But just disappointing from Gregson, because as you mentioned as well, it is important to have the personalities there, but this crosses a line. When it becomes personality and on-track stuff, that's fine. Off-track interviews, whatever, that's one thing.
Ego.
But when you're putting other people at risk, that's a whole different thing. And I was a little bit surprised. Well,
no fine.
I was surprised NASCAR didn't do like more
Like probation
about it, something like that, because it's tough to prove intent or anything like that. So you can't like slap a suspension or anything like that. But I thought they would have done maybe something as we know we can't really prove it in the circumstance, but you better be damn sure you don't do anything like this again.
Yeah, he was called to the NASCAR hauler after the race. They discussed it, but no penalties were.
Wow.
Yeah,
I'm sure that'll really sort him out. But.
You know, the thing is, you know, I remember back, you know, early 2010s. I hate to harp on this era, but it was just crazy NASCAR at that time with rivalries and probations and suspensions and everything like that. And I swear, like 5 different guys were on probation at the same time, and we never see that now.
I'm not gonna lie.
That's what I'm saying. But like,
but the key thing is there's a difference between like a fight for an on-track thing and what happened here, because it wasn't an on-track thing. It wasn't an on-track incident. It was Gregson putting Hemric's crew members essentially at risk of serious injury by doing what he did. And people might look to it and say that we're blowing it out of proportion, but it really isn't. Like any of those crew members there could have seriously been injured by the act that Gregson did there. So,
tires are heavy. They may look light when they're carrying them, but there's a lot of stuff.
Those are some damn good athletes, man. Those are a lot of like former D1 athletes there.
Yeah.
So it's just frustrating to see. I wish NASCAR maybe did something a little bit more to kind of set a precedent there, but I have a feeling that this one probably isn't over with, if we're being honest.
No, I think this could be a lingering situation for a little bit here.
Unsurprisingly, no Gregson has another new rival.
I do think, you know, Hemric's not the guy to wreck somebody, but he will make it extremely difficult for Gregson for the remainder of the season. I can bet you on that.
Exactly.
So, you know, if that's what's going to happen, then good hard racing is what we're going to see. And that's, you know, that's all we can kind of ask for at the end of the day.
Man, they're wild.
Names are made
they
here.
Like the fisticuffs.
That's definitely the case. So definitely the most controversial point of the weekend there after the Xfinity Series race. But that was probably the biggest storyline of the weekend.
Honestly,
as well. Just that. But that does it kind of for the trucks and Xfinity and Cup Series races from Atlanta. Overall, what were your final thoughts there on the NASCAR weekend there before we quickly look at Sebring?
Yeah, it was fine overall. I thought Xfinity was as chaotic as it was a pretty solid race there, especially with Truex having the speeding penalty and spicing things up at the end. Unfortunate to see some of the wrecks and some of the people that went out earlier than maybe expected and see what they could have done throughout the day. But you had some different names up there competing at the front, like Jeremy Clements in there for a little bit, and Allgaier going out there and fending off the Cup Series guy at the end made for some great racing. Trucks was mediocre. Cup was mediocre until the finish as well. But I think Xfinity was probably the highlight of the weekend.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But congratulations to all 3 winners, Blaney, Allgaier, and Kyle Busch. Successful weekend from Atlanta. Should be interesting to see what happens next weekend on the Bristol Dirt.
Here we go. Oh my God.
A little bit later on this week. I mean, Fox has definitely hyped it up. They've invested a lot of money into their marketing for this.
They're the reason it's happening. So
yeah, that's why you can see why. I mean, you know, when you put that much amount of money and effort into making this happen, you would suspect the same thing. We have the Pro Invitational returning later on this week as well.
I'm fascinated to see the viewership numbers this weekend, just given all the advertising.
The race or the race? Pro Invitational.
Sorry.
Okay, yeah.
For the race. I mean, Pro Invitational as well.
That should be fun on Wednesday as well.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
We'll see who's participating. Gonna give a bit of a glimpse.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated
with
to see
the amount of
well.
emphasis put on this weekend, how different it is.
Major network, Fox as well.
It's going to be interesting, man. That's going to be a fascinating one.
Yeah, I mean, it's a deal breaker, I think, for Fox on their ratings this season. It's everything that they've kind of piled into.
They need a home
run.
Oh,
Jakes. But no. After the Daytona 500.
Okay, they need a grand slam. How do you like that?
Okay, all right. I'll give you 2 grand slams. How about that?
Okay.
We're not going to get into okay.
Simmer down.
But yeah, the Bristol Dirt. We'll see what happens with that. Oh dear Lord. We'll have that preview a little bit later on. But let's look at the 12 Hours of Sebring that was this past weekend. The second really endurance race of the season. Obviously, the Rolex 24 a couple of months back, but now we had the 12 Hours of Sebring. Obviously, 12 hours shorter, hence the name. But nonetheless, we had a bit of a surprise winner, I would say, out of this whole thing in the DPI class. The overall winner, this one, the number 5, driven by Duval, Bourdais, and Vautier. I mean, what a performance from these guys.
French connection.
They nailed it this weekend. It was all over the place in this one from what I saw. Bits and pieces. A whole bunch of different guys were leading. The 31 car was on the pole. They had a whole host of issues in this one. I'm not even going to try and describe everything that happened in this one. But the 55 car finishing in second there with Meyershank Racing in,
Meyershank Racing in third.
In third, sorry, excuse me. Mazda Motorsports there in second. Very solid run. Cadillac winning once again here in the DPI class in the IMSA WeatherTech Endurance Sports Car Series. So, just a solid race, I would say. I didn't get to see the whole thing. I couldn't bring myself to watch 12 hours, quite sit down this past weekend, but lots of different ups and downs. We got no predictions right from what we predicted last week. Compared to our Rolex 24, this was bad. The 01 was up there for a lot of the race. I think the cautions really hurt them is what I kind of saw.
They had an issue going to pit the last time around as well. So they were leading, everything was good. They went into the pits, made contact with the GTD, ended up costing them quite a bit of time. They ended up a couple laps back, but a really strong race overall. Really, really fun finish. When you look at the car driven by Bourdais there at the end, having to fend off a couple of cars for the overall win there, the 55 Mazda finishing a second and a half back, but also the 48 there was right there at the end. Of course, they ended up getting DQ'd because of the time penalty with Pagenaud, but good race for the overall finish at the end of things. Chaos in GTLM where the 3 car was kind of the leading car all day long, Corvette Racing. And then they make contact with the number 25 BMW with only like 7 minutes to go, like not a lot of time left. And through going to the front because of obviously the spin for the number 3 and then the penalty applied to the 25 is the only private GTLM, the WeatherTech Racing Porsche, who continue their winning streak in GTLM at 12 Hours of Sebring as well. So great to see that as well. Overall, really fun race. Sebring is always a ton of fun, and we got some really good racing, really close finishes as well for an endurance race as well. So good start to this IMSA season when you look at the 24 Hours of Daytona and how strong that race was as well.
The track surface there is just
nuts. It's amazing, isn't it?
Like the amount of bumps on that track is just, it's inhumane really, but it's awesome. It's like crazy to see the suspension on these cars withstand that for 12 hours straight.
Getting a workout down in Florida after that one. Oh man.
Absolutely. Oh my God. It's just, it really is really crazy to me how endurance racing really works. Like the amount of effort that goes in, especially like if you want to call this a traditional sprint race, when you look at the 24 Hours of Le Mans and of course the Rolex 24, this is kind of like a baby version of it. This is sprint to the finish, trying to get as much as you can out of it. Only 3 drivers per car. Like, you're just trying to maximize each stint. Fatigue necessarily doesn't come into as big of a factor as obviously a 24 hours race does. So it's
no overnight shift going from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. there. So
exactly.
Also time. before we get too ahead of ourselves as well, GTD shout out to Zachary Robichon, the Canadian with the Canadian team as well, with FAF Motorsports getting the win in the GTD class. Obviously goes overlooked more compared to like the DPIs and everything like that. But nice to see a Canadian going out there and getting a win in class.
Absolutely. I gotta have our Canadians doing well on the international stage. So that's what we love to see. Hopefully we see that more this season. We love to see the Canadians step up to the plate even more so than what they did last season in 2020. But it's still hard to recap a 12-hour race. So I honestly,
crazy
I
wrecks
can't.
in this one though. There was some
big flip,
impacts,
big flip. Like we saw on
I think it was at a turn 1. That's also where the 31 made contact with another car as well.
That was nuts.
There was a couple, I think it was, there was a couple of GTDs as well that went off in turn 1. So there was some big impacts about this one, some scary wrecks there. But also, I don't know, this is going off a little bit, but did you see the finish in the MX-5 Cup as well?
No, I didn't.
You need to check it out. 3-wide finish with like nose barely. MX-5 Cup is insane. It's nuts, but a fun weekend in Sebring, and IMSA really strong start to the year with a couple strong races.
Absolutely. So we don't need to recap it any more than that. Just give you the overall winner there. Congratulations.
Definitely don't need to go over our race winner predictions because they did
No,
not
I'm not even going to bother. I'm not even going to bother.
It was a curse
We don't need
this
to make
weekend.
ourselves look any worse after the fantasy week we had. So, yeah, we're going to save ourselves that embarrassment, but it's always fun to do the predictions. We'll keep on bringing them out for all these big races, and especially something like Sebring, the 69th annual event here as well. It's a big race, and we're happy that IMSA is off to a
another
fine
big
start.
gap until the next race here for IMSA as well. We're waiting until May 16th at Mid-Ohio. Not endurance or anything like that, just a straight 2-hour 40-minute race coming up, hopefully on May 16th, of course, pending any COVID postponements or anything like that, but seems like we'll be on pace to do that. So another pretty lengthy break until the next IMSA race, and then after that we really get into the thick of the season when we get multiple races in a couple of months span there. But solid start to the IMSA season. Couple of endurance races out of the way. The next one isn't until the 6 hours at the Glen, and then obviously the season finale, Petit Le Mans at Road Atlanta. But two of the big ones out of the way early here.
Absolutely. So that does it for the 12 hours of Sebring. Any final thoughts before we wrap up yet another episode of the Green Flag, Kyle?
Yes, definitely a fun weekend. At times a bit dull at other points as well. Definitely a lot of talking points coming out of this weekend.
Whew, I'm tired.
But it's going to feel like light work compared to what's going to be coming up this next week when you look at
Good
Formula
Lord.
One coming back and Bristol Dirt. Oh, it's going to be chaos this upcoming weekend.
Yeah, it's not like I have dozens of assignments to this next week or anything, right?
And you bet I'm procrastinating on all of them to watch racing instead.
You know, I may have to ask for an extension or two along the way as well. Say that I'm a little busy.
Exposing yourself out here.
No, but who's going to watch this? But from the prof situation, it is what it is at the end of the day. But another fun episode here. Atlanta was overall a success. Sebring, of course, was a great race as well. You can't go wrong with a little bit of endurance racing. Yeah. And then looking forward to the week ahead. Last weekend without Formula One for a long, long time this season, all the way to December, really, we have Formula One to worry about on a weekly, bi-weekly basis. It's going to be a fun ride here, so make sure you stay tuned at the Green Flag. We've got you covered on everything in the world of motorsports. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at the Green Flag Pod, as well as Twitter at the Green Flag Pod. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Leave a like on this video. If you enjoyed it, we'd really, really appreciate it. All the links to our social channels will be in the description of the video. But for this episode, I've been Lukas Wacker. He's been Kyle Cushman, signing off for now. We will talk to you a little bit later this week to get you set up for the Bristol Dirt and preview F1's return in Bahrain. We'll talk to you later, guys.